Well, happy 4th of July, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great day. And we are here with a special video that I've been planning on doing for a while now. But I think with it being the 4th of July, being such a special day, it is a good day to finally do a video going over the potential candidates for 2028 for the Republican Party. Now, to be clear about this is not an official prediction for who's going to run, if it's a guaranteed thing. And this is as of now. A lot can happen in what? 2 years? Really 1 year when you factor in a lot of candidates will declare in 2027. But the point is, I really want to delve into the 2028 primary, see who's going to potentially run, and try to rank them. And as you can probably tell, this is not an ordinary tier list. We're going to be ranking the candidates on two main things. How electable are they, and how good are they on the issues? And of course, this is relative to the GOP and this list. So that does not mean somebody that is electorally above average. That does not mean they're going to automatically win or whatever. It just means relative to this list, how electable are they, or how good are they on the issues? And when it comes to electability, we will factor in both the primary and the general electorates. And the reason I do that is very simple. If somebody is very strong with the base for the primary, but has massive issues for the general electorate, that's not good. And vice versa. Maybe there is a candidate that might appeal to some independent voters, but a lot of the core base, they're just not going to vote. That's also not good. You want to find somebody that's able to do both good with the base and, relatively speaking, good with the general electorate. So I made that clear. Again, things could change. This is my opinion. This is relative. And there are some people on this list that obviously are not going to run, but I decided to include a couple just for the memes. But we're going to start with Tulsi Gabbard, and listen, she's not going to run. There's been some speculation she might be Vance's VP. That's not going to happen. But there's been some people talking about it. And listen, I like Tulsi. She was pretty solid at DNI, but let's be real here. Compared to some of the people on this list, she's not the best on the issues. Is she terrible? No. She's had a change of heart in some stuff, but relatively speaking, not the best on the issues. And really, there's no way she can win a general election. Just let's be honest here. She's just not. So I think Tulsi Gabbard, she's not terrible on the issues, but for the average Republican, she kind of is, especially stuff like abortion, even immigration. She's not batshit crazy like the Democrats are, but she still isn't this S-tier Republican on immigration. So Tulsi Gabbard right now, she's not as bad as some other people are, but again, not the greatest either when you factor in every single issue, not just one or two niche issues. And electorally speaking, yeah, there's no way she could win a general election. She might do decent with the base. A lot of people do like her. But outside of that, yeah, no, she would not win. So Tulsi Gabbard, I think that's kind of a fair spot for her. And there might be some changes here and there, but either way, Tulsi Gabbard, I think is a good spot for her right there. Pete Hegseth. I don't know why people are talking about Hegseth like he's going to run, but it's not going to happen. And even if it did, there's no way in hell he would win. Again, he's decent on the issues. He's been decent as defense secretary, but electorally, yeah, no, that's kind of a meme. That's not going to happen. Greg Abbott, another one that doesn't make any sense. Now, for Republican standards, I know we bash him a lot here, but really, Greg Abbott, compared to other people, is not the worst. Like, there's some really bad Republicans out there. So I think on the issues, he's average, maybe slightly above average. And electorally, it's kind of a weird one because, yeah, he's very strong in Texas, but that's a different animal. He does win by 20 points. But would that really translate to a national election? I don't know. And there are some of the base that don't really like him. So I think Greg Abbott, I think that's a decent spot for him. I'm not, again, you can adjust it a little bit, but I think Greg Abbott, that's a good spot for him. And we got Mike Pence. Oh boy, this is, yeah, I'm just gonna say no. There's no way in hell he could win an election. And he's just not the greatest on the issues. Is he as bad as some other people? Again, no. He's good on stuff like abortion and guns. Outside of that, though, is there really an issue he's great on? No. He's awful on trade, says dumb stuff about immigration, and awful on foreign policy. So, yeah, no, he's not the greatest on the issues. And there's no way in hell really any Trump voter would vote for this guy in a primary or a general for obvious reasons. So far, yeah, not a great start for the Republican candidates, but these are kind of the meme picks, the ones that it's not going to happen. So, yeah, Mike Pence, he goes there. Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas. I don't know why people are talking about her. She's an okay governor, but again, electorally, maybe average at best. But I'm just going to say below average, slightly better than Abbott, but not really saying much. And now we get to the first just completely out there pick, Greg Bovino. Now, for those that don't know, this was the guy that ran the Minneapolis operation, which became a clusterfuck. It was a disaster. It was a shit show. It got so bad, Trump had to send in Tom Homan to fix that mess. Now, Bovino talks a big game about immigration. I'm glad he's talking about deporting every single person. But at the same time, you look at some of the other stuff he's saying, he's out there. I think he's lost it completely. I have no clue what happened to the guy. A couple months ago, he seemed fine, but now he's just anti-Trump. He's anti basically everything Trump does. He wants more deportations, good. But some of the stuff he says, yeah, no, he's not going to win an election. So immigration is really the only thing keeping him afloat. But outside of that, nothing really special. John Kennedy, no fucking clue why he wants to run. That's a rumor, by the way. John Kennedy, he might run. Compared to some Republicans, he's whatever, slightly below average. Electability-wise, I don't even know where you put this guy. He's just generic R. So, right there. I don't really know what to do with him. John Kennedy, I don't get why he wants to run. Does he think he can win? I don't think so. He says funny stuff sometimes, but really, why would he want to run for president when he's, what, 70? So, yeah, John Kennedy, whatever on the issues, I would say below average on electability. And, oh boy, another meme candidate, Chris Christie. Yeah, that's right. Chris Christie might actually run for president yet again. I don't think I got to say much about this pick. Bottom left, he's awful on the issues. He's just a generic never Trumper. He gets worse by the day. And there's no way he could ever win the primary base. And if somehow he became the nominee, there are millions of Trump voters that would say, no, we're not voting for you. And does he really appeal to the average voter? Maybe back in 2012, sure. But ever since like 2013, his political career went down the toilet. So Chris Christie, I don't think anyone's going to dispute this. Not great on the issues. In fact, probably the worst on this list. Not electable whatsoever. Bottom left, you stay there. I don't get why some of these people think they can run. And so far, it's not been good. You've had some okay picks like Huckabee Sanders and Greg Abbott. They're not the worst on the issues. But electorally speaking, so far, you could tell these are kind of the out there candidates. There's no way any of these guys have any chance of winning. Now we have Doug Ducey. Here's the thing with Doug Ducey. If he wasn't this deranged never Trumper that he's kind of become, not as bad as somebody like Chris Christie or Cheney, but he's still kind of out there on the Trump issue. I don't think he would be the absolute worst pick in the world. On the issues, he's not actually the worst. The problem is, some of the Trump stuff is just, I don't get what you're trying to do. Like, do you think that's the Republican base? They're generic never Trumpers. I know it's Arizona, but still, the Trump issue was just his biggest downfall. Outside of that, though, he actually wouldn't have been the worst pick in the world. But after all the never Trump stuff and the fact that nobody cares about him anymore, he's just an out there candidate. I could see him being slightly more electable than Mike Pence, maybe because he doesn't have some of the crazy stuff Mike Pence said about abortion or other cultural issues that might be unpopular. And on the issues, Doug Ducey isn't the worst. But again, you gotta somehow appease the base and the general electorate. If you piss off your core base, you can't win a primary, let alone a general election. So Doug Ducey, I think it's a good spot for him. Nikki Haley, kind of similar. I mean, not as much of a never Trumper as Doug Ducey is, but kind of the same tier, just right over here somewhere. Not really going to explain much more. I think that's just common sense. Josh Hawley. Again, I don't get why some of these people think they can really succeed Trump, especially when some of the heavy hitters come up. I don't get Josh Hawley at all. On the issues, he is a top 5 senator. He's gone down a little bit since 2020, but he still is a top 5 senator on most issues. He gets it. So on the issues, he's by far the best of everybody mentioned so far. Problem is, I just don't see the appeal. Yes, he's popular in Missouri. He's going to be the Missouri senator for as long as he wants to. But what's the appeal outside of Missouri? You see the problem here? It just Josh Hawley on the issues, he's great. But realistically speaking, is he really that electable? Is he really able to win a general election outside of Missouri? That's a big question. He's not unelectable. I just think he's the same tier as somebody like Greg Abbott or Huckabee Sanders, where they could maybe win, but they're kind of below average. One of those things where we got to wait and see. But on the issues, yes, he's great. Steve Bannon, again, another one that's great on the issues, but I don't get why he wants to run. Like, you're gonna get like 5% of the vote. I get the idea that he wants to make sure the Republican Party, they talk about issues that people care about, like immigration. Fine. And he is on the issues probably better than Hawley. But electability wise, yeah, no. No. There is no way in hell somebody like Steve Bannon could win. He would juice up the base. That's true. But do you really think the average voter would vote for Steve Bannon? I don't think so. I think Steve Bannon, though, on the issues, probably better than Hawley. Again, you can change my opinion on this, I guess, but right now I think Steve Bannon is better on the issues slightly. Maybe it is tied. Kind of hard to tell, but I don't think anyone can really dispute that. Yeah, Josh Hawley is a bit more electable. Steve Bannon, he's not. I don't get the strategy here. What is Steve Bannon's plan? You're going to get 5% and take that as a victory? Yeah, not a good strategy. So Steve Bannon goes to the bottom right corner. Good on the issues. You might argue he is bottom right completely, but electability wise, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Rand Paul. The good news with Rand Paul is he has woken up on some stuff. He realized, oh, I can't be a never Trumper on every single issue. And in fact, ever since Massey lost his primary, he's been a lot better. Rand Paul, he realized the base is pro-Trump. They want stuff done. They don't want you focused on this garbage like Thomas Massey and MTG were focused on. They want actual things. They want results. And his push to clarify birthright citizenship is a great thing. He is leading the charge on birthright citizenship. He has gotten better in recent weeks. Problem is, I don't see him being electable. Is he as unelectable as Steve Bannon or Mike Pence? No, but I think he's just below Greg Abbott and just above somebody like Steve Bannon. He is getting better on the issues, but he still is a libertarian. Ted Cruz, again, I don't get why Cruz wants to run. I don't get it. But Ted Cruz on most issues is actually fine. But again, he said stuff in the past and he supports stuff that in the general election is going to hurt him big time. And everyone knows about the Israel stuff where he's a giant Zionist. He says a lot of dumb stuff that he shouldn't say. And that appeases nobody. Outside a small evangelical base in the GOP, nobody gives a shit about this stuff. So I don't get why he's so hyper-focused on it. But I do think Ted Cruz, he's kind of better than Rand Paul, I would say. But that's not really saying much. And electability-wise, probably the same tier. Now we get Brian Kemp. Again, another Republican that actually wouldn't be that bad on both the issues and electability. He would actually be a decent choice if it wasn't for the TDS, for his fist fight with Trump, which is, again, just stupid. They hate each other, and the base hates Brian Kemp. And it gets worse by the day. Again, Trump is not the only issue with Kemp, but really, do you think the average Trump voter is going to vote for Brian Kemp in a primary? They might vote for him in a general, maybe as a last resort. But again, Brian Kemp on the issues, excluding Orange Man Bad, is not that bad. In fact, in some areas, he's done a lot of good stuff for Georgia. But the problem is, he does these dumb fights with Trump. And really, what happened in Georgia with the Senate primary, all this political capital is gone. He wasted it on that primary, which was nonsensical. He should have never done that. He should have just ran for the Senate. If he would have been a team player, we're talking about a different story. But right now, kind of right there, kind of the middle. He's not the bad on the issues. But do you think he can win a primary? It may be in a best case scenario, the stars align. But in a general, he could probably win Georgia. He could maybe win an election. Maybe you could argue at the same tiers like Greg Abbott. Maybe. But again, it's still not a strong position for Kemp. That's the issue. The only thing going for him is the fact that he is a governor of a swing state. One that, mind you, is critical to win the White House. You win Georgia, you have a good chance of winning. So I think we could adjust Brian Kemp to be slightly more electable than Abbott. I think if it wasn't for the Trump stuff, he probably would be the first candidate I would say is, electorally speaking, above average. But there's so many people in the base that just despise this guy. I don't think he gets enough support in the base to win a primary, let alone the general. So yeah, he is better than Greg Abbott on some issues, but on other issues, it pushed them back. That's the issue here. So you can rearrange it a little bit. Maybe it is something like this. I think Kemp is so far the most electable guy as of now. But again, he would be in a much better position if he did not have this constant slap fight with Trump. Now we get two people that I think we could put together, MTG and Thomas Massie. Oh boy. Listen, get out of here. Unelectable, both of you. I don't even know where to put these two. Like, yes, on some issues, they're more conservative than others. But then you got MTG saying Trump is bad for doing immigration enforcement. And Thomas Massie, same thing. He says, we don't need the Save America Act. That's the issue here. So I don't really know where to put these two. Just put them there. Sure. Like, I think it's a good spot for them. Like, they're better than Pence, I guess. But either way, it's kind of hard where to put these two. They're just not electable. Sorry to break it to some people, but nobody gives a shit about the Epstein files. Even now, people have moved on. Do you think come 2028, people are going to care about that stuff? No. And even then, MTG and Massie would never win a primary. MTG got forced out, and Thomas Massie got embarrassed in his primary. The base hates their guts now. And even if you ignore all of that, they have said so much crazy shit in the past that it would drive away so many swing voters. They could not possibly win. They would get embarrassed. In fact, I think they're going to run third party. That's my prediction. And they're going to get like 2% of the vote. And that's it. So, yeah, MTG and Thomas Massey, good job. You burnt all your political capital on garbage that people have already moved on from. So that's all of the meme candidates, the ones that are not going to win. They have no pathway and or they're just shit on the issues. But there are three that I think are both good on the issues and have some kind of electability. That is Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, and of course, JD Vance. Now, Ron DeSantis, I do think, is the first one you could say, yeah, on the issues, he's one of the best out there. Again, when it comes to Steve Bannon and Hawley, you can make adjustments here and there, but Ron DeSantis, I do think, is great on the issues. Now, his biggest downfall is running for president in 24. That was stupid. Because even to this day, there's a lot of people that just don't trust DeSantis, and that campaign really just, it pushed people away from him. But thankfully for him, people have mostly moved on, and he has done a lot of good stuff since 24. And even before 2024, he did a lot of good stuff for Florida. That's why a lot of people backed him. That's why a lot of people pushed for him to run in 24. It failed, but at least you can kind of get the reason why they pushed for DeSantis. Again, there are some concerns. Can he unite the base fully? There's still some people that are skeptical of him. Can he win a general election? He did turn Florida red. And I don't think he's this god-awful candidate that some people claim he is. But I do see the argument that maybe he's not the most electable guy. But I think compared to a lot of these other people, he's so far been the best pick. Brian Kemp is the second most electable guy. Only because he's from a swing state and maybe he does just enough to win over the swing voter and he keeps enough of the base. Maybe. But DeSantis, I think he has a more secured share of the vote in the base. And I do think it would translate in the general. Just enough to where I would say, yeah, so far he's one of the only few that you could really say is kind of electable. Mostly, whatever. So, yeah, Ron DeSantis, good on the issues. And so far, I consider to be the most electable pick. The best pick as of now. Now you got Marco Rubio. The rise of Marco Rubio needs to be studied. And I've said this before 100 different times. Marco Rubio should be the vice president in 2028. If Vance doesn't run, we'll get to Vance in a second, Marco Rubio should be the nominee. I really believe that. I think he is so far the strongest pick. Now, on the issues, maybe he's not as good as DeSantis or Bannon or even Hawley, but I do think he's far better on the issues than Brian Kemp and Greg Abbott. And I do think he is actually electable. The base would vote for him. Maybe not the most excited for him, at least in some parts, like in the Rust Belt, but there are also plenty of swing voters that would vote for this guy. 100%. And he really doesn't have a base problem. If this was in 2020, that's a different story. That was right after 2016, where he ran an awful campaign as the moderate pick, the establishment choice, and it was awful. But now, he has rebuilt this image to the point where, in my opinion, right now, and for most other people, he is the second choice for 2026. He is the most electable as of now. Again, relative to the GOP, relative to these other people, relative to everything going on, he's good on the issues, not perfect. There are concerns with Marco Rubio, like with foreign policy. Yes, he's been great as Secretary of State. But would that still translate in as being president? That's a concern because he still has some neocon tendencies. I do think Marco Rubio right now, he is the strongest pick, except for one. Everyone knows what I'm going to say about JD Vance. He is the only one, again, relative to everyone here, relative to the GOP, he is the most electable, and I would argue the best on the issues. There, I said it. I think he is the best pick for the GOP for obvious reasons. He's a vice president. He has a good track record. There, again, I'm not saying he's for sure going to win, but I do think compared to everyone here, he has the most name recognition. The base is going to vote for him. And I would argue he does not have the problems Trump has with some swing voters. With Trump, yes, his personality is loved by millions. At the same time, there's plenty of swing voters that hate his personality. And that's why they do not vote for the guy. JD Vance, he doesn't have those same issues. So I think Vance right now, he is in the bottom right or top right corner, excuse me. He is the most electable pick. He already has the base behind him. He does not have the same concerns that Trump has with swing voters. And on the issues, I would say he is the most complete pick. Now, you can make some slight adjustments here and there. Maybe you move DeSantis and Kemp up a little bit. Same for people like Greg Abbott, Kennedy. You change things a little bit here and there. But you get the point that, yeah, the Republican Party, they have really only three good options right now. JD Vance, Marco Rubio, and Ron DeSantis. It's just stunning to me that Brian Kemp could actually be a decent pick if it wasn't for the TDS. And really the only thing propping him up is the fact he is from Georgia. He is from a swing state. Outside of that, though, the appeal with Brian Kemp, there basically is none. And even the Georgia stuff, it's clear his political power and political capital, it's gone. Now, this is my opinion. Things can absolutely change. You can make some slight adjustments here and there. Maybe you don't think Ron DeSantis is as electable as I think. That is a reasonable take. I just think right now, this is a good gauge for how things are looking for 28. Relative to the GOP, Vance is, I think, of the major candidates are the ones potentially going to run the best overall pick on the issues and electorally speaking. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.